Hello, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today's video is part of a broader anti-sex trafficking initiative by the Ontario Ministry of Education and your school board that's designed to take a triple-pronged approach to combating the growing issue of sex trafficking. This includes education for staff, students, and families. Sex trafficking can happen in any community in any country. It involves recruiting, transporting, or holding victims for the purpose of sexual exploitation. Sex traffickers get their victims to provide sexual services in person or online through different forms of coercion. There is no singular story when it comes to sex trafficking. And to learn more about sex trafficking in general, please check out the other videos and information posted on the Safe Schools webpage. The other day, I sat down with Linda Harlos. Linda is a parent here in Ontario, and she's with us to share her story and the perspective of a parent of a survivor. Linda is the mother of sex trafficking survivor Samantha, who has given us consent to share her story. We appreciate the opportunity to learn from the parent of a survivor. Linda is a sex trafficking prevention educator. She's also a speaker and an author. As the mother of a sex trafficking victim, Linda endeavors to help families educate themselves in the hopes of preventing victimization. Working with many organizations, including Victim Services, Covenant House, Courage for Freedom, and more, she understands and tries to help both the survivors and those in the families of the survivor to learn coping skills and alleviate the guilt that's associated with victimization and secondary victimization. Linda has done many interviews to spread awareness with CBC, Global News, CTV, 360 Kids, the National Council of Jewish Women of Canada, the Toronto Star, and more. You can check out the work that Linda does, as well as watch her videos on her website or YouTube channel, both called parentwithpurpose.ca. Welcome, Linda. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Jazz.
Before we get started, I just wanted to ask you, what was it like growing up in your family? What was it like growing up in your home?
I think we have a very typical family. We are a suburban family, very close-knit, very faith-based. We did a lot for the church, a lot for the community, was always doing volunteer hours in the school or different outreaches. We were very close-knit. We did family nights, movie nights, game nights. We spent a lot of time together. And, you know, two parents, one works, I was a stay-at-home mom. So we were what I consider to be just a normal, regular family.
Mm-hmm. And I know when, you're mentioning this, I'm sure a lot of us might be envisioning a family that's quite like ours. So, I know you're here joining us today because your daughter was trafficked. What happened? How did that happen?
Yeah, our family suddenly became not so normal. You're correct about that. My daughter ended up going to a party and she ended up getting the rape drug, and she ended up getting gang raped, and due to that rape she became pregnant. A lot of her friends and a lot of the community, some family members, distant family members, thought that she actually was lying about the rape in order to cover up the pregnancy. Mm-hmm. She ended up becoming really ostracized at school. They were picking on her and putting notes on her locker and making her feel extremely isolated. Mm-hmm. One day she ended up seeing this guy out in the smoking area, and he was talking to some of the people that she knew. And then he started reaching out to her on social media. And because he was speaking to people that she knew out in the smoking area, there was no red flags going off for her. She thought, everybody knows this guy. Mm-hmm. And he was very friendly, and he was doing everything he could to make her feel better, saying he believed her, that he heard about her story. He felt really bad for her. If there was anything he could do. And over time, he eventually asked to go for a coffee. They met up. And the rest is pretty much history at that part. They got involved in a relationship. He said he wanted to become the father figure to her child, convinced her to move out after she had the baby, did what he could to kind of get between us because we were really wanting her to stay home. Mm-hmm. She was a teen mom and we wanted to be there to support her.
Yeah.
And he convinced her to leave. and she left. And shortly after she left, he started trafficking her. So that's when our family had a different side to us, but we didn't know that for quite some time. She didn't tell us any of this for 8 years.
And so I know you talked a little bit as you're sharing that about some vulnerabilities that she had that the trafficker actually ended up exploiting. What, in your opinion, as her mom, made her the most vulnerable in this situation?
It was that nobody believed her, and that she lost most of her friends, if not all of them, truthfully. The rape itself was bad, but that's a trauma that you can get over if other people will let you and let you heal, and they didn't. They didn't allow her that chance. They used it against her, and so she felt very much alone, and that's what he saw, and that's what he exploited, and that's how he got involved in her life and then groomed her. Is just mostly just from feeling so isolated and feeling like nobody else believed her, and here comes this guy, and he's going to be a father figure. She didn't want to be a single mom. And he said he believed everything that she said. And he believed her story, and his heart was breaking for her. She had sympathy. Where she hadn't had any from anybody. I mean, she did from us, but as a teenager, you're not interested in your parents' approval. You're looking for your friends' approval, and she was getting none of that.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Did you feel at that time that there were any red flags that you were able to spot as this was happening?
Yes, there were some red flags, but unfortunately, because we did not know what sex trafficking was back then, the red flags to us just looked like an abusive relationship. We saw that he was controlling. We saw that he wangled his way into her life so quickly, but he did something that was much more important for her, which was give her stability, and he did that way too quickly. Like, there was not much of a relationship before he just was in there. That was a red flag to us. Trying to get it so that Samantha and I were in fights, or coming and telling me how Samantha was lying about this, that, or the other thing, and then going back to Samantha and telling her things that neither one of us had said. So creating a lot of friction, as well as being very controlling of her time. And he tried to control things that were in our house. He was aggressive to my grandson as well. I did see that once and was not happy about it. So to us, without being educated on what sex trafficking was, it was just an abusive relationship, and we were doing everything in our power to open her eyes to that. And if anybody's in an abusive relationship or been in one, you know it's very difficult to show that to the victim and make them see that that's what it was. And then little did we know that it was much more than that.
And that's a very difficult thing to find out or realize. When did you find out that Samantha was being trafficked?
We found out Samantha was trafficked 8 years after it happened. So it was only happening for about 4 months. And then she ended up calling us one night, and we come and picked her up, and she came home. She didn't know that she was being trafficked. So when she figured out what it was, which was 8 years later, that's when she come and she told us that that's actually what had happened to her. And that's when all the pieces fell into place for us, and we realized all the things that weren't making sense to us while she was in that relationship suddenly all started making sense.
And so I know at the time you didn't realize that she was being trafficked. Looking back, is there anything that you realized that you did well at the time that maybe created that space for her to feel comfortable actually giving you a call when things were going wrong or when she needed to leave?
Yeah, well, we are a very close-knit family. And when I asked her that, like, why did you call us? She goes, because I knew you'd come and pick me up, no questions asked. And that has always been our goal, is to make sure our kids know that we love them. We didn't say it as much back then, and it has become my tagline since, is that you need to say, I love you no matter what, so that it's actually verbalized as well. But obviously she knew anyway, which I'm very grateful for. But those, because we were close and she knew that we weren't going to turn our backs on her or not let her come back. Even if she decided to tell us all of the things that she had done, which she didn't, and that's very typical behavior for Samantha way back then, was to keep hiding behind things. And a lot of that now we know, looking back, was shame and lack of knowledge, not knowing really what had happened to her and not knowing how to cope with it. And she's very good at self-healing, especially now after going through all this. But she didn't want to share it with us, so she didn't. And that was okay too, because that's the way she needed to process this. So we did a lot of just making sure that lines of communication were open and making sure that we were there to listen to her whenever she wanted to talk.
Yeah. And having all of the knowledge, education, and resources that you have now, what do you wish you could have told yourself back then? Or what do you wish you knew back then that you know now?
I wish I had have realized what domestic sex trafficking really is. And I will, we all think it's very Hollywood, throw it in the back of a van, or if you're going to another country, then they're going to, scoop you up off the street. And domestic sex trafficking is nothing like that. So now I wish that I had taken the time to be more educated on that. I wished I had have understood Samantha's vulnerabilities and been able to say to her a little bit more, I understand that you feel like you don't have any friends. I promise you it will get better. Yeah. But I didn't realize that was her biggest vulnerability. She didn't share that with us. And lastly, we didn't teach her proper consent because we didn't know proper consent. Now I educate people on what consent is because I didn't do it to my kids. So I'm out there educating people. Those are the three things that I wish I had known, and that's why I spend my life making sure that other people know those things.
So now, considering all that, and the fact that you're sitting here with me and sharing all of your personal experiences with all of us, what motivates you to do this? What motivates you to do this work?
My daughter. She, after she figured out what had happened to her, she went out and she started talking to young people in schools, telling her story in the hopes that they would not end up having it happen to her. And she did it for as long as she could. She did a lot of self-healing, and so she was very healed, but she needed a break. She was doing some speaking engagements with me before she actually stopped, but she's the one that motivates me. She did it because she wanted to help young people not be victimized like she was due to lack of knowledge. And what better way to have somebody, one of your own peers, come up and say, this happened to me. And now that's why I do what I do, is I'm trying to educate parents in all the mistakes that we missed, so hopefully they don't miss it. So my daughter and her story and her courage to speak to kids is why I'm just carrying on the flag, and I'm continuing to do that work just in a different way.
So seeing all of the growth and the healing that has happened both for you and Samantha so many years after this situation happened, what helped you move forward from something like that to be in the position that you are today, where you're here and you're speaking to us and being open and honest about something that's so personal?
I truly believe that in life there's all the things that happen to you, they can make you bitter or better, and the choice is totally up to you. And after she was healed and she was okay with me talking about her story, because I never talk about her story without her permission, then the best way for us to finalize that healing is to help other people and to share the story, so hopefully it doesn't happen to them. And I have this thought in my head when I go to bed at night, is that if I can help another parent not have to put their head on the pillow at night, feeling bad for something that they should have done, or education they should have learned, or a way that they could have protected their child and didn't know, it becomes this mantra that's in my head at night. I get to put my head on the pillow now with a little less guilt, because at least we are hopefully preventing this from happening to other families. So that's really what keeps us going, keeps me motivated, and makes it so that I am here today talking to you, is so that other people can not have to put their head in the pillow at night feeling crappy because they didn't protect their kids.
I think that's so inspiring. I think taking something that's that difficult and turning it into something that is focused on education and empowerment and consent and giving back to the community is just such a powerful thing. So I guess I want to end things off by asking you, where are things at with you and Samantha today?
Well, honestly, they're better than ever. My grandson is 13 years old now, and he is the heartbeat of our family. He's the only grandchild, and her and my grandson come over as often as they can. It's the same as my son-in-law, because she's married now. And we spend as much time together as we possibly can. Not just her and I, but the family as often as we can. We're always doing big family dinners. But I think what touches me most is when she'll just text me, "Mom, can I come over for coffee or for breakfast?" And she just shows up and we just chat. And we rarely talk about this anymore. It's part of our past. I do this as a way to hopefully prevent it from happening to other families, but we don't focus on this when we have family time. We have family time, and we just enjoy each other and our time together, and we talk about jobs and kids and life and romance and movies.
All the good things
All
in life.
the good things in life. And so honestly, our family is stronger, and we survived. It's hopefully something that other families will be able to go, no matter what the tragedy is that they have in their life, just a way for them to know at the end of this, just be there for each other, and you will get through it.
Thank you so much for that. That's so incredibly inspiring, and just I'm so grateful for you to come here today, share your family's story with us, and really work hard to educate and empower people with the knowledge on how to prevent this from happening and how to support young people that are going through a tough time. So thank you, Linda.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me, Jess, as always.
That conversation was so incredibly inspiring and insightful. We're so grateful to Linda for her willingness to share her family's story so that we can improve our understanding of what sex trafficking looks like here in Ontario. Samantha's experience as a sex trafficking victim is unique, as is every victim's story. In her case, Samantha's main vulnerability was a sexual assault. There are numerous vulnerabilities, including individual and systemic, and each may make someone vulnerable to exploitation, including sex trafficking. If you want to learn more about sex trafficking in general, please check out the other videos, information, and resources posted on the Safe Schools webpage. While sex trafficking is a horrible crime, it is one that can be combated through education, and that is why we must educate ourselves and our community about this growing issue. Parents, staff, and students need to understand the problem, recognize possible signs and indicators, and be confident in asking for help. Once again, a huge thank you to Linda and Samantha for sharing their stories of resilience with us. We're so incredibly grateful.